this will be the model that we are going to design today. You can see it's a pretty elegant model. This is made by a larger jewelry manufacturer. I'm sure you guys have probably seen it before. Don't want to give out names or promote anything, but we will get into the design of this style ring. You can see it's got these 5 stones, sorry, 5 rubies. Then it has this yellow gold bezel that's in between, and then each of those has this style halo around it, right? So we can pretty much build this model inside of MatrixGold to be fully parametric. That way you can change up the model or flex it and have multiple iterations of that model. So are there any questions up till now? If so, please ask. Does not look like it, so we will go ahead. And yeah, even though I am modeling, you are able to still submit questions. So if you do think of something, please send it and I'll get to it when I can. So yeah, to start something off like the ring I just showed, we will essentially need a ring rail, right? So everything we do as far as a ring should be built around a ring rail. Now, in order to put that gem, we're going to do a gem on ring rail. That way it is related to this ring rail, right? So let's click it. And you can see it populates a stone. So we just need to adjust to an oval shape. So I can select oval and it changes the stone shape to an oval. Let's reduce the size to 5 by 3. Let's pull it closer to the ring rail, maybe not that close. So now you can see the stone is going east and west instead of north and south, right? So we need to rotate this stone. So under the dynamic command, we have rotation. So we just turn it 90 degrees and the stone rotates. So we can right click to accept. And now I have that stone in my document, right? So the next thing we need to do is put a bezel. So I'm going to select my stone and run bezel. So you can see this is our Bezel Builder. So you can pull these viewport handles if you want, or you can come here and pull the sliders. I find it easier for my modeling to use the viewport handle, so that's what I am accustomed to, but just know that you can use either or. So I'm going to pull these viewport handles a bit just to kind of get something producible. I am going to reduce the seat height to 0.01 because I want it right at the lip of my stone, and then I'm going to reduce the dome height to 0. So what that's going to do is give me a flatter kind of dome right here. It'll make sense later on whenever I put Milgrain, because you can see on this it has tiny beading all the way around, which they use to set that stone, right? So let's get something we want, and that looks pretty good. So let's right click to accept. So there's a few different ways to proceed. I tend to do everything I need for one specific object, meaning if I'm building the bezel, I will do everything for that bezel that can be done before proceeding to the halo. So I need to get some Milgrain on this bezel. So I can do that by extracting an ISO curve, which if I click it, you can see all of these brep edges essentially make up the bezel, right? So I can extract one of these and make it a curve. So I will select extract ISO curve from surface. And you can see it gives me this. Now, using the viewport handles, I can move it around to where I would like it. But as I said, we need it up top. So let's move it there and let's rotate it 90 degrees. There we go. So I'm going to right click. Now I need to select that curve, go to solids, and put the Milgrain. So the Milgrain is going to be put with object on curve. So if I select that, I can use the viewport handles and pull it all the way around. And we'll pull this one. Hold shift so it snaps to the quarter position. And now we can reduce the size. Let's go down to about 0.5. And reduce the spacing. So that is pretty close. I think I may go a little bit smaller. Whenever you're modeling Milgrain, it's pretty hard when you kind of think about the manufacturing of it. So if you think about making a perfectly spherical object, it still has to go through 3D printing, it still has to go through casting, it still has to go through tumbling, through prep and polish. So by the time all this is done, you have essentially a flat top. So generally, I would put the Milgrain in there for render purposes for my customer. But whenever I would be done, I would essentially hide these and just pipe this curve. That way I can run a beading tool after I set the stone and give it a more uniform look. But we don't have the luxury of that inside of CAD software yet. So we're stuck with the Milgrain. Long story short. So let's edit this and I will pull them a little bit closer. So as I have it built now, the gem cutter would put the stone in, cut the seats into the actual Milgrain, and then beading tool, he would hit each bead to kind of tighten that stone. So that's kind of how I have it set now. Let's move them a little bit closer. So you see also using the viewport handles, how it snaps to 0.5s. You can actually come in here and type something different and it will do that. All right. So now that the bezel is complete, we can move on to the halo. So I can go under settings, click halo. Down here it's saying select the gem you want to use for our halo, and we'll select this one. If we right click, it should populate a halo for us. Let's pull these down just a tad. And here is where we will choose our stone size. So I'm going to reduce to about a 1 millimeter. Anything smaller than that and it'll be nightmare for the stone setter. So up here, you can see under the dynamic commands panel, as I run the commands, it is showing essentially a history of all the commands I've used. So if ever I accidentally accept the command or I want to change something, I can just come back and edit that command and it'll bring up all of the options again, right? So I have the stones at 1 millimeter. Let's do a gem spacing of 0.15. Kind of open it up a bit. And then we're going to move over to the level 2. So you can see when I click level 2, it opens up more handles for me. So I'm going to use those handles and move everything into position and how I want it. So let's reduce this wall thickness. Let's reduce the outside. Let's pick some height up a bit. There we go. All right. Maybe pull this up a tad more. And we essentially have the base halo we need. Now, one issue everybody's probably screaming to their computer right now is it doesn't look like the picture. So to match the picture, we are going to scroll up right here. It says channel. If I toggle that, it will fill in that channel for me. So now we just need to turn the prongs off. If I go to level 3, under the first setting style, I can turn them off as well. Now from the pictures, it appears to be that kind of French split prong, we call it French pave down here. So the stones need to go into the metal a little bit more, right? So let's find height offset and type -0.1. So now they should drop into the surface like that. Let's right click and let's go to a through view. So I need to pull my stone down a little bit more, and because of the parametric history, all of these are associated to that stone. So anything I do to the stone will automatically adapt to the halo. And that looks good. So you can see I failed to go over display modes and layers, but everyone in here pretty much has an idea of what MatrixGold is. I'll kind of touch on it a bit, but the layers are going to be a way to stay organized while you're modeling. So let's say I have multiple stones that I need to select. So I can select the stone and apply a different color to it. That way I can select that color, or I can keep them separated, for whatever reason. I can hit the eyeball and it will hide it, or I can lock it to where anytime I want to select it, it will not select that color. So pretty much any designer will use these and kind of knows and understands how they are used. The next thing is the display mode. So a display mode is going to be essentially a viewport look, right? So this is our viewport. I can double click to open those up. I can double click to go back to 4 views. But let's say I want to change this one to a wireframe. Well, I can left click, and now this one is a wireframe, and all of these are plastic. So let's say I wanted to change this one to a rendered view. I can do that. So now this one is a rendered view, while these are plastics. Even though it's the same object, and you can see that by if I select, it highlights in all of them. It's just different viewport looks. So I prefer to build in the plastic view because it gives me the best resolution, in my opinion. So let's select this, and we'll make this Milgrain purple for render purposes. So now I'm going to change my stone layer. That way I can right click this gem one and it'll select these stones, right? So now we need to do our booleans. I'm debating pulling this halo in a bit more, so let's edit that real quick. Sorry, those that have been here know I am a bit of a perfectionist, which I guess is a good thing when it comes to modeling, but a bad thing whenever, you know, the modeler is demonstrating, I guess. And sometimes you have to play with the viewport handles just to get the right look and feel. All right, that should be good enough. Let me turn my channel back off and right click. Okay, so now back we can select the stones, and we need to put some gem cuts, right? So we can select the channel cut. Now this will do either a channel cut, or it can also do our graver cut down the middle. So if I go back to wireframe, I can look inside. I need to pull it down just a tad and up a bit more. And that looks pretty good. So I will right click. I need to select the stones one more time and run a micro prong. So whenever I run that micro prong cutter, you can see over here, it opens under the dynamic commands tab. So this profile I want to change. I like to give it more of a round scallop look. So I'm going to select that box and hit channel 3, which will give me that kind of half round look. So accepting that, I can pull and push these viewport handles. I do like to give it a little bend for aesthetics. Maybe increase the width a little bit more. Let's go to like 70%. You still want some width. It'll make sense in a second, because once you cut, the width that is left over will become the prong for the stone. So let's accept these cutters. So now I have these cutters. And then we need to put the split prongs in between these. So I'm going to select my stones one more time and run micro prong cutters again. So you can see it is putting it right on top of the old ones, but we need it in between. So if I hop over here to the panel, I have this toggle between gems. I can toggle that on and the cutters will hop between the gems. And then we just extrude and pull the viewport handles how we want. I'm also going to change this profile. I like a sharper look, like channel 8. That way it gives the prongs kind of a little more aesthetics. So if I select that and accept it, I can use the viewport handles to adjust a little bit more. All right. So right here, you can see we have some issues, right? This is going to be like 0.1 millimeter, so that won't fly. So we need to taper, right? Because all of these are going into a point, which is going to be the center. So they need to kind of taper out. So if I toggle that on, you can see they're all tapering. So we just reduced the width back to normal. And then we can actually select, go back and edit the scallop cuts to do the same. Toggle auto taper. Now these are facing outside, but they need to face inside, right? So we need to take the rotation and spin them around 180 degrees. Let's go to a wireframe, make sure we're good. And right click. So that looks much better. So now we can Boolean. So a Boolean is essentially a deduction of the metal, right? So I need to deduct these orange from the green. So I can go to solid, select Boolean difference, because I want to get rid of the difference. Select my halo, because it is going to be my first surface, and right click. Now the command line says select second surface, which is going to be my orange, and then right click. So while we wait, oh, there it is. So you can see it deducted, and it looks pretty good. So I can right click to accept, and now my surface has cuts. One more thing we need to do is a gem cut. So before you, a quick piece of advice, before you make more objects, it's always best to complete one object and then mirror that completed object. I know that's a little vague, but in this case, I would complete this halo because we're going to multiply the halo around. And in most cases, when it comes to Booleans, the least amount of booleans, the better, because a boolean is a heavy operation, meaning it's very taxing on your processor and video cards. So the least amount of stones possible, the better. So I can go back to cutters. Right here we have gem cutters. So with my stone selected, I can hit gem cut. So you can see it's populating these gem cuts. Now I can pull and push these, but we have a small library of cutters already available. So the kebab menu up here, I can click. So you can see it has a bunch of options. I want style because that'll open my style sheets. So let's select number 2. We can go to wireframe, make sure it's encompassing our stone. Let's increase our thickness and our seat a bit more, and then we'll reduce the height on this. You don't have to, just because it's not interfering with anything, but I think it looks better. So, all right, so accepting that, it will populate these cutters. So I just need to Boolean from the metal, right? So Boolean difference, metal, stones. And while you're not able to see it, if I accept, then hide the stones, you can see the gem cuts. So let's bring those back. Okay, so now essentially the middle's done. So we essentially need to get 4 more on 2 on either side, right? So the easiest way, now I could come here and put more stones if I wanted. And I move this, pull this, right click, select it, and essentially match attributes from this one, right? But the easiest way is going to take what we already have and array it around the ring rail. So if I select my halo bezel, go to transform, polar array. So what the polar array will do, it'll send that halo all the way around a specific plane, right? So I can do x-axis, which will do it flat. I can do y-axis, which will do it around the top. I'm sorry, z-axis, which will do it around the top. But we need to select y-axis, and that'll go around the ring rail. So then we just need to increase the object count. Let's go to 10, and 10 might be too much, just a bit. So let's go down to 8. That looks good. So I can right click. So I have 3 extra down here. But first, if we pull the picture up, you can see it ends right about halfway. So that means my stones, because halfway would be about right here, maybe a little bit more, my stones are a little too big. So I can come here, edit my stone length, wait for it to update. So it's calculating all of these booleans, which I said are a heavy operation. So it may take some time. I probably should have restarted before I started this webinar, but I digress. So you can see that opened it up and made it smaller, and this might work. So let's right click. We're going to go to polar array. We'll edit that one, and we'll add one more, which will push them up. So it did push them up. I think we just need to increase the stone height. So right click, edit the stone height, and let's bring it up a bit. Wait for it to calculate the booleans. If you guys would like a faster version, just don't do the booleans yet. As I said, the booleans slow it down because it is a heavy operation. So let's right click. And we're kind of out of time, so I need to hurry up. This is a reoccurring theme, I tell you. Okay, so that's good enough. So what we need to do is essentially hide a few of these, right? So let's select what we want to hide. I'm going to select the halos, pretty much the stones, the Milgrain, everything. So I'm going to type GV hide. Now what that's going to do is hide the geometry from the document altogether. So even though it is deleted and gone, in the eyes of the software, it is just hidden. So it's a way of maintaining parametric history without breaking history, right? So, all right, so next we just need to complete the bottom, right? Which is easy enough. We just select the ring rail and we profile place. So profile place will give me a curve. Now this curve is going to sweep along the ring rail eventually. So that's how the surface is created. So let's put one there. Let's mirror. And now we just need to sweep these two. Surface, sweep one, because I have one ring rail. So the first ring rail and then the two profiles, and it will complete. So now I have this part, right? Now we need to do this part. So let's profile place one more time. Let's move the position, except I'm going to come essentially even with this last profile, and it'll make sense why we do it this way. And then we're going to pull it out about right here and change the profile. So let's select the square. Reduce the width. Pull it even. And if I auto sweep, we can see that the new profile is kind of overlapping the original one. So what we need to do is edit this profile to match this shape. So if I select the pencil, it'll bring up profile editor. So I need to grab these, and we can focus one at a time. Let's pull these down and try and match. You can also select them and delete these if you feel there is too many. There we go. We got the bottom. Now we got the top rather. Now let's do the bottom. And that looks close enough so I can select. And now that profile matches this side of that square. So let's just add one right here. Let's see what auto sweep looks a little bit better, but we still need some work. So let's go back to this one and edit. Okay, close enough. And right click. So we need to complete the sweep. Go to surface, sweep 1, curve, curve, right click, and we can bring this one back. So I did this kind of on purpose. So right now it's in the middle, right? So we need to edit, select this profile, and we can just drag it out to where we want it. We can reduce the height and even pull it up like that. Now we just mirror. So selecting the object, transform, mirror, except I want to go 4 directions. So I toggle X and Y, and then the multiple at the bottom, and right click. And there we go. It's I would probably open this up a bit more, but we're out of time. So I will open this up for questions, even though we are a little bit over. Any questions to go over? Now there's a few other things I would do. I would probably re-edit the halo and pull down and then cut with ring rail, and that will match and close all of this. We're just kind of out of time, so any other questions? Nice work, Bo. Thank you, Sterling. I appreciate that. Tell you what, I need to start timing myself when I practice, just so we can get through it all. Yep. All right. Well, anyway, guys, in a week or two, we will have a special guest on this webinar. It will be Oriel, who's the product owner. So he will be going over all the new updates and tools and commands that will be added in the next update. So please tell your friends and tell them to join to watch. It's going to be pretty special, and can't wait for all of you guys to see it. If there are no more questions, I would like to thank each and every one of you for joining. I hope you all stay safe during these crazy, crazy times. And as I said, these are every Wednesday, so please re-enroll every chance you get. You do have to enroll every time, which is kind of inconvenient, but it gives us truer reporting and analytics. So, all right, guys. Well, I appreciate it, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Have a great day and afternoon. Bye.